Chapter 24, Puerto Rico. It was my first time on a plane, and the trip took forever. As it was an Air France plane, we had a stopover in Pointe Picre, Guadalupe Island, and there was no direct flight. I stayed there, and the next day I continued on to Puerto Rico. At about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the captain announced that we were flying over the island, and in a few minutes we would land. I had a window seat, and I could see how the plane descended over the buildings next to the seashore until it landed a few meters away from a large highway. We disembarked, walked through corridors, stairways, and immigration agents' offices. They asked us questions in English, so serious that not a muscle moved to their faces, rudely stamping our passports and saying, "Welcome to Puerto Rico." Then a glass door opened, and I felt the first Puerto Rican greeting, a hot steam on my face informing me that I was in the tropics. A few steps away, among several people, I spotted Bernardo. We hugged and walked to the parking lot, where I was shocked when he stopped in front of a brand new black Mustang and opened the door for me. As I settled into the sports car, I was struck by the beautiful nickel-plated wild horse figurine on the steering wheel. My brother put it in gear and accelerated so I could feel the powerful roar of his engine. I was speechless. We took an exit lined with palm trees as the afternoon began to fall, with its range of orange colors over the sea. Bernardo pulled the hood back and the warm, humid air ruffled our hair. He led me down a lighted avenue and said, "This is the county. We'll come here so you can see the hotels. We'll walk at night along the Ashford Avenue where you can see famous artists walking down the street. In the daytime, we'll come to the beach and go into the hotels to swim in the pool. Look at that sign. Liza Minnelli is performing Saturday at La Concha. That's a round building over there," he points out to me. "And at the Condado Plaza, Paul Anka is performing. All the Vegas artists come here." We followed the road and left that fantasy behind us. We took an express road that took us to a new housing development. He didn't give me any details, nor did I ask where he was taking me, assuming we were going to his apartment where his friend Juanjo would receive us. But suddenly, he parked in front of a house, got out of the car, put my suitcase down, took out some keys, and opened the gate to the front garden. At that moment, while I was getting out of the car watching his movements, a beautiful young woman with cinnamon skin appeared at the door of the house and greeted him lovingly. Then she turned to me and said in all familiarity, "Maggie, I'm glad you're here. I'm Taina, your sister-in-law." She introduced herself and then shouted, "Mommy, Bernardo is here with his sister. Come and say hello." Then a larger woman with darker skin than Taina's came out. She came up to me and hugged me, then exclaimed, "And she's as white as Nidia Caro." I was still in shock at this surprise meeting with a sister-in-law I had never heard of before. I was ushered into the living room of the house while I looked sideways for my brother's gaze, as if asking for an explanation. Taina, noticing my bewilderment, said, "Oh baby, I'm sure Bernardo didn't tell you anything about my tummy. Don't worry, we'll have time to talk about everything." Suddenly, a guy appeared from the hallway and stood there, hands in his pockets, indifferent and a bit defiant. I looked him up and down. He was wearing a pear-collar low-back pullover, which he casually matched with his plaid pants. He wore large, white brown loafers and no socks. He had the look of a strong man, contrasting with his teenage face and golden curls. In the absence of formal introductions, I took the initiative and approached him to say hello. Then Bernardo said, "This is my friend, the gringo Jim Hutton of the Braden Co. Do you remember them, the Huttons?" "Well, yes, who hasn't heard of them? But I didn't know you personally," I said, kissing his cheek, where I smelled a strong aroma of tobacco and boot perfume, which penetrated my nose, and I still smell it in my memory. He did not speak at all. He only listened to the dialogue between my brother and me. After a while, he left, saying, "See you." Juanjo, a mutual friend from our childhood who watched the whole scene from the living room sofa, stood up to greet me and commented, "Whew, the weird gringo finally left. and we all laughed. It was past 11 o'clock at night, and I was very tired. It had been a day of many emotions. Above all, meeting this new family that Bernardo had kept secret for months and that impressed me enormously. When I went to my room and went to bed, I reviewed the images of my arrival. The meeting with Jim, the impression of meeting my sister-in-law and her mother. The one that surprised me the most was Tina, about 6 months pregnant. My parents would be grandparents for the first time, and they had no idea. I fell asleep wondering how I would break the tremendous news to Rosalinda. At about 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard noises in the kitchen, and the incomparable aroma of brewed coffee woke me up. It was Tina, dressed as an executive to go to work. I sat down next to her, and we sipped our coffee. I said nothing, just looked at her worried face. She told me that she had married Bernardo, very much in love, that the baby would be a girl and would be born in March. However, I felt there was something there. She looked at the clock of the wall and said, "I'll hurry so I don't get clogged up and get there on time. See you in the afternoon," she said with a kiss on my cheek. I finished my coffee, thinking about how quickly life changes for some people, not imagining that mine was going the same way. I spent the morning organizing my luggage. I hung my clothes in the closet and tidied the bed with the veil, as I call the mosquito net tied to the 4 pillars. By noon, everything was in its place. Bernardo arrived and said to me, "Put on your bathing suit. We'll go to the beach so you can see what it's like to bathe here and swim out to sea." Within minutes, I looked like an American tourist in my beach attire, complemented by a beautiful straw hat that I had bought at the hotel in Punta Pitre. Bernardo looked at me, smiled, and said, "Hey, you've become a gringa. With that look, you'll get in everywhere without attracting attention." We headed towards the county area, parked at the La Concha Hotel, and headed straight to the beach around noon. The sand glistened with the sun rays, and the sea barely moved. It came and went gently, like a huge pool of crystal clear water. When I dove in, I felt like I was in paradise. Looking up at the sky, I was grateful for what I was experiencing and how lucky I was. I closed my eyes as I floated, and the sea rocked me next to my brother. He told me that he would have to travel to Chile to pick up his residency and be legal in the United States, so he would have no problem working. He assured me that I would be fine with Tina and her mother, that they were generous and kind-hearted people, which I found out as the days went by. Doña Clarita sewed professionally in a sewing workshop in the house, which ended up being my favorite place. After her early morning coffee, she would sit at her machine and start working. I would settle in next to her, and we would share about our lives, family, countries, and customs. She, with her sympathy, would tell me about her childhood with her 10 siblings, who had grown up on a farm where they grew bananas, yams, mangoes, and avocados. She called herself a jíbara, which means peasant who cultivates the land. "Maggie," she said to me, "Puerto Rico in my childhood was not like it is now. In 1930, the population did not even reach 1.5 million. Poverty and unemployment were everywhere. The Americans administered almost all the land, sugar and coffee plantations, and to make matters worse, in 1928 and 1932, we were hit by 2 major hurricanes, San Felipe and San Cipriano, totally destroying the island. My brothers joined the Navy and were sent to Europe during World War II. Thank God they returned safe and sound, highly decorated, proud to be American citizens and to serve their country. Today, they live on the island, are veterans, and have a pension for life. One day I will take you to the mountain to meet them." At that time, she continued, "I was 20 years old and I went with Mercedes, another of my sisters, to New York, where we could get a job in a factory sewing women's clothing." "Oh, how nice," I replied. "Tell me more. Is that where you learned to sew professionally?" "Yes," she said. "Our managers were very demanding when it came to quality control. I spent 15 years out there, saved enough money to educate Tina, and came back, because that cold is unbearable, baby. I continued to question her. Did you visit the Statue of Liberty and Fifth Avenue? She told me about her Saturday night's dancing trips to the Palladium, where Puerto Ricans gathered to listen to the timbales of Tito Puente, the songs of Bobby Capó, and the unforgettable boleros of Tito Rodriguez. I listened attentively to the stories, and my imagination transported me to a splendid salon where I saw myself dancing in Vicente's arms. She also told me that in 1948, Puerto Ricans voted for their first governor, Don Luis Muñoz Marín, and in 1952, Puerto Rico became a Commonwealth of the United States. With all the benefits you see, mija, nowadays we have great universities and our children can go to improve their education at universities abroad, such as Harvard, Yale, etc. And all the politicians have gone to graduate there because being Americans, we have 1,000 advantages. After 8 hours of trials, work, and pleasant conversation, Clarita took out of her skirt a beautiful and elegant dress and told me, take it. So you can have your first weekend to the San Juan Hotel. You're going to charm Jim when he invites you. Thanks. Hopefully, I'll use it for Valentine's Day. Christmas time was approaching, and in the evening, we would sit in the marquee to listen to the neighborhood kids singing, playing tambourines, maracas, and güiros. Clarita told me that this has been a tradition for years and that sometimes the neighbors would raid you with music, which happened at midnight from house to house. You receive them with coconut, some palito, and treats, but if they are in the early morning, you must have a good chicken soup to recover the huma, the drunkenness. Gradually, I learned her traditional idioms and her Spanglish, which she had adopted when she was New Yorkina. In 2 more days, it was Christmas Eve, and my brother invited his friends, Harun and Juanjo. I prepared dinner, the same dinner my mother cooked in Chile, baked turkey, celery salad with walnuts and potatoes with homemade mayonnaise. Over the years, I switched to the Puerto Rican menu, ham with pineapple, sweet potatoes, pickled bananas, roast piglet, rice with peas, and to sweeten the night, coconut tembleque, which I eat to this day because I find it more appetizing than ours. In the days leading up to Christmas, Jim had shown up every day offering to take me to the beach and show me some places on the island. And since I wanted to make the most of my stay, I gladly accepted. His introverted character compensated with mine, more expansive and sociable, which suited both of us. Without realizing it, we got to know each other and got used to each other. So we shared the holidays with the feeling that we were cooking more than just delicious Caribbean recipes. Just as quickly as Christmas arrived, with Santa Claus, his jingle bells, gifts, and the squandering of lights, they left in the same way to give way to the wise men festivities, the real ones, the ones of pure Puerto Rican stock. It is then when the airport was crowded with families from New York, Chicago, Boston, and Florida, states where most of the Puerto Ricans living outside the island are concentrated. They arrive loaded with suitcases, boxes of gifts, as they say, for mommy, daddy, and the kids. For the reception, typical food is cooked in large cauldrons: shrimp mofongo, chicken soup, banana and yuca cakes, tostones and amarillitos. They drink pitorro, which is handmade rum distilled in stills. The family and neighbors gather to sing with güiros, cuatros, and maracas. They dance plena, bomba, salsa, and merengue until dawn. But the celebrations do not end there. Then follow the octavitas, where the party continues. Afterwards, there is a 1-week break to change the Christmas decorations and begin the traditional San Sebastián festivities. In Old San Juan, the streets are decorated to receive great artists of painting, wood carvings of saints, singers of the highest category, such as José Feliciano, Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, and others. These artists cheer up every night the locals and tourists who disembark from the luxurious transatlantic liners, settle at the docks to enjoy the warmth and the centennial beauty of the port on the island. At the end of a week of revelry in the historic center, the new year begins, pa fajarse y dar la lucha. As I reminisce once again, I feel fortunate to have had these experiences with such caring and authentic people who have touched me and helped me shape me into the woman I am. February 14, 1969, Valentine's Day. Once again, we have a party, but this time it's the mixed hearts that abound on all sides. Jim arrived with a red rose and invited me to eat at the Hostal Español, the most exclusive restaurant in San Juan, where the high society attends and you have to make reservations well in advance. When he announced the surprise, I was thrilled, as I had never set foot in such a place. I spent the whole day trying on a series of outfits to be up to par. After modeling several outfits, Clarita recommended the pink silk one. It was perfect, simple, and elegant. It felt harmoniously outlining my figure, and at the same time, it contrasted with the color of my skin, already golden by the sun. Taina lent me a little bag of canutillos that I combined with some pantallas, as they call earrings in Puerto Rico. When I looked in the mirror, I felt like a jet-setting tourist at the Hotel San Juan. Jim arrived promptly at 7:30 p.m. in his blue Triumph sports car that sparkled like a sapphire. Upon arrival at the restaurant, the valet parked it. As we passed by, the doorman opened the heavy Spanish-style doors. Apparently, he mistook us for Americans and said, "Good evening, do you have reservations?" Jim replied in excellent, unaccented English, "Yes, for two, under the name Hutton." I looked at him with the corner of my eye and found him very attractive. He looked great in his light blue shirt and blue sports jacket. While Bernardo was finishing his paperwork in Chile to return to Puerto Rico with his green card, I got a job at Grand Chic, a store dedicated exclusively to baby and children's furniture and accessories. I love my job, from 9 to 5 in the afternoon serving young girls, usually pregnant. My salary was $80 a week, which I used for the last purchases and gifts that I would take to my family when I returned to Chile in the next few days. My tourist visa was about to expire. It was the afternoon when Jim picked me up from work and invited me to our favorite place, a McDonald's facing the sea in Puerta de Tierra, from where the Bay of San Juan and the immensity of the Atlantic Ocean could be appreciated. In the distance, a few cruise ships were disappearing with the sun on the horizon. At that moment, an attentive girl approached us and we ordered the usual. A double cheeseburger without pickles, with fries and soda for him, and a fish with all the extras for me. I was used to joke with the waitress and always told her, "Put his pickles on mine." Within minutes, she returned with the order, which we savored immediately. Out of nowhere, Jim surprised me. "Don't go. Stay and marry me." I almost choked. I took a sip of soda to assimilate what I was hearing, but I quickly reacted, as is my habit, and without thinking for a minute, I pulled him close to me to kiss him, telling him, "Tomorrow I will write to my mother to tell her the news. I will do the same." At that moment, we set the date for May 24. It was a month away, but we had to marry before my visa expired. When we arrived at Clarita's house, we surprised her and she offered to make me a dress for the occasion. In the following days, we dedicated ourselves to process our documents to take them to the justice of the peace and get married. We did the same at the church, but the priest put 1,000 obstacles and flatly refused, for lacking documents of our Catholic sacraments. Therefore, there was no religious wedding. The 24th of May arrived suddenly, and at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we were dressed to the nines before the judge to certify our civil union before the laws of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. The procedure was carried out without any protocol. Only 2 witnesses who signed the certificates, and in less than half an hour, we left as the Hutton spouses. The funny and anecdotal part of this unforgettable day was that when we got to the car, it did not want to start. Fortunately, it was downhill street, because I, with my white muslin dress, had to give it a push, and we went down the street laughing to some friends to celebrate with champagne. Then we retired to our first love nest, a large and airy room in a guest house, where we had everything: a queen-size bed with impeccable cannon sheets, a closet for our things, and a drawer where I placed all of our things, which consisted of 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 cups, 4 pieces of silverware, a pot, and a frying pan. The kitchen and bathroom were shared with another young couple with whom, on occasion, we snacked on a terrace next to our room. My first job in Puerto Rico. Early June 1969. Within a week of the wedding, I was home alone when Jim left for work. By then, he was repairing air conditioners. One morning, with his partner Juan Raul, we were assigned to repair a central unit in a penthouse in a very exclusive building in San Juan County. In Puerto Rico, a penthouse is a name given to the apartment that occupies the top of a building, and in this case, being on the beachfront, it enjoyed a spectacular view of the bay. The owner, an older American lady, immediately took a liking to Jim, since he spoke perfect English, unlike his Chilean partner. When they finished, Mrs. Rayner asked if they knew any girls who could help with the housework. In the afternoon, when Jim arrived, he told me about his stay in this fabulous apartment and what the lady had asked him. Without thinking twice, I said, "I am the girl she needs. Call her and tell her I'll be there first thing in the morning." I found it a great opportunity to distract myself, to have some economic autonomy, to practice the language, and to meet top people, and the idea of doing it in that area was very attractive. On the other hand, I had always shared the housework with my mother, and I had no problem in assisting in these chores. The next day, my husband took me there and introduced me. The place where it was located already revealed the high level of the owners, an impeccable and landscape building in the most distinguished area of the city. When we reached the lobby, the doorman took us to the elevator and pressed the PH button, corresponding to the penthouse. It was such a modern construction that it was like stepping into a spaceship. It looked like a steel box upholstered in mirrors. In a second, the doors opened and we were already in the foyer of the apartment. For me, it was shocking, as I had never entered a home as spacious and dazzling as that one. I was struck by the shine of the marble floor, the hermetically sealed windows, and the pleasant temperature that maintained the ambience. Mrs. May Rayner was alone. She was a lady of about 70 years of age, blonde, blue-eyed, slender, and with fine manners. I found her to be a great lady, very affable and welcoming. Jim translated for me what I did not understand. She told him what she needed from me as she showed me around the house, but I understood it better by common sense, and she loved my autonomy and perfectionism. That same morning, I started my job, even though I was not fluent in English and my employer knew zero Spanish. When it was time for lunch, she opened the fridge, and I was dazzled by the quantity and assortment of delicious food it contained. She invited me to eat whatever I wanted, so I enjoyed myself like a child, trying all kinds of new flavors, textures, and colors. Her husband, Mr. Rayner, whom I met only a couple of times, worked for the federal government in charge of the Puerto Rico Internal Revenue Department. Since he was hardly ever home, the rooms were kept pretty clean. Likewise, I would arrive every morning to do the cleaning, but it was cleaning on top of clean because I was very dexterous. I had nothing to learn and I did everything diligently. In the middle of the day, I used to prepare delicious salads accompanied with seafood or fish. The desserts were always pineapple, mango, or papaya. At the end of the day, I would put the dishes in the dishwasher, and while she took a nap, I would go down to the beach to swim and sunbathe until 3 in the afternoon. When I came back, I would take a shower and get dressed, without my apron, to have coffee and chat with Mrs. Rayner, with whom we had pleasant conversations. She was a member of a Jewish family in New York, being a very spoiled daughter of a well-known banker. In the evenings, she attended concerts with her husband, who would pick her up at Vermouth time. She would ask me to find the right clothes for her in her closet, and I enjoyed that task, as she trusted my good taste and judgment to make her look elegant at the open of each event. More than her maid, I became her lady-in-waiting. Every year, after the summer, a big gala is held to the benefit of the Museo de Ponce, where the high society attends, and the Rayner were on the list. On that occasion, looking in her closet for the ideal suit, I pulled out a mink stole of which I saw large monograms with her initials on the inside lining. Noticing my astonishment, she told me that her father had bought it at Saks on Fifth Avenue in New York and had it embroidered in silk specially for her. Mrs. Rayner had 2 sons studying in New York. I never met them live, but I did meet them in pictures they had in their rooms. One day, while cleaning them, she surprised me by telling me that she would have liked me to marry Mike, the eldest. 8 months later, when a letter from immigration announced that I should return to Chile to pick up my residency, I had to leave this job, and upon announcing it to her, she invited me and Jim to meal at her house as a farewell gift. She summoned us at 6:30 p.m., and we dressed up for the occasion. In addition, we bought a bouquet of roses that my husband would deliver to the hostess. When we arrived, I was amazed to see the table set with a long tablecloth in their formal dining room. This time, it was they who served us for special guests. As we said our goodbyes that evening, despite her distant ways, May hugged me warmly. Some time later, on one of my visits to Chile, we stopped in Buenos Aires and decided to spend a few days to take advantage of the fall of their Argentinian peso. There, I found 4 stalls similar to hers. In memory of her, I took the whim of asking the seller to embroider the inside lining with my initials. Monday through Friday, Jim and I worked, and the weekends were for laundry, beach, or walking around the interior of the island, while we visited and got to know from one end to the another. We would stop at any local food restaurant called Chinchorros to taste seafood or fresh fish. Unexpectedly, we found some virgin beaches where tourists arrive only by chance, like us, and with whom sometimes we made friends, making the day more enjoyable. At dusk, the mimes would scurry around us and we would return to San Juan. This is how the first 4 months passed happily, without debts or great ambitions. One morning, I opened my eyes and had a hunch. I was overcome with a feeling I had never experienced before. I put my hand on my abdomen and confirmed that I was pregnant. I felt like the luckiest woman to participate in the miracle of life. In addition, the dream of creating my own family would begin to take shape. I spent that day pondering how to break the news to Jim. In the afternoon, when he came home from work, I asked him to sit down and I went over to his side. "Give me your hand," I said, taking it and placing it on my belly. He opened his eyes wide and we both smiled and looked at each other with excitement. I shook my head in agreement and he understood immediately. "It will be a boy, beautiful and healthy like you, and his name will be Matt," I announced. He breathed in deeply and contently, for he also wanted to be a father. "Now it will change our lives," he added. From that moment on, I kept dreaming about my baby. What would he be like? I bought him clothes and counted the minutes until I could hold him in my arms. The wait was the longest 9 months of my life.